oyo ya boye kaina pana mawa na kokate asusu oyo na polaka kawela pokonzi pena babwatiliyo baboti tango ekomaka kaina komi moto ona bango nakomituma ondele akete ipanda totuaka oya naniye Afrika 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 oh nipata Afrika oh liberté
Greetings to you all our participants, our viewers across the globe, at home, in the diaspora. Greetings to you all. We have a very unusual policy dialogue today, which is looking at the recent court challenge by Musengezi against the process leading to the ousting of Robert Mugabe in 2017. There are pertinent questions. The first is, why now? Why was this case not brought up earlier? It's 4 years since the coup. The second is, what are the possible implications given what is known in Zimbabwe as a captured judiciary? Thirdly, to what extent does this reflect the state of the party, intra-party conflict? We know that tomorrow the case is before the courts, and we know that the ZANU-PF is taking it very seriously. It would be interesting to know from the panelists what is the likely line of defense, of response. And today we have Brian Kagoro, a lawyer in his own right, but also an activist, to moderate the discussion. Regrettably, and the Musengezi himself is very ill. I spoke to him. He might join us, but he can hardly speak. He's lost his voice. Very bad bout of flu. I was laughing with him to Arroyo, but he's with us and he stands his ground. The other participant, Richard Mahova, you don't have to guess why he's not on the program, but due to unforeseen, I don't use the word unforeseen, but due to foreseen circumstances, is unable or has been disabled from participating. So here we are, and so we, depending, I see Sybeth has joined us. Musengezi, welcome, Musengezi. It'll indicate to me whether you're able to say a few words after the Brian Kagoro takes over. So Brian, I'll move it to you. Take it up. Sybeth is there, Musengezi. You may want to ask whether you can say a few words or just remain an observer.
Thank you, Dr. Mandaza. Let me just remind us what the SAPES dialogues are about. They are about surfacing matters of national interest and ensuring that we hear a diversity of views. And within the context of these dialogues, we always see and endeavor to stay respectful, but to differ robustly. So for those who are on the call, the encouragement is that on this platform, we recognize that we're not a political choir and that there must be a divergence of views that need to be surfaced. The issue we're discussing today is broad, it's varied, it has many, many nuances. After I've heard from Musengezi and Pilani Zamchia, I will get into some of those nuances as we try and get a discussion going. Musengezi, I'll invite you, my brother, to say a few words. I understand that you are not feeling well, but it would be good just to hear a few words from you. What is this case about and why now? Whatever you can afford to do, even if it's a hello, and then we'll hear from Dr. Zamchia. Please go ahead, Sybeth.
Sybeth, you're muted. You're muted, Sybeth.
Sybeth, you're on mute, yeah?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Yes, I was saying thank you, but as you can hear, my voice isn't that good. I have a terrible flu. So I'm just going to give a few words, then I'll leave the discussion. So pertaining to what you were asking, this case basically it's about the illegal ascendancy of Comrade Mnangagwa to the position of First Secretary and President of our party. He was elected in an illegal meeting, the one that was held on the 19th of November, 2017. So that's what prompted me to approach the High Court so that the issue can be addressed. An election can be held where we will be able to choose the person that we want to lead the party.
And so the question was, why now? Why? It's 2017 is 4 years ago.
That's when we realized that the meeting was illegal. I was still going through the Constitution and seeking advice from lawyers. And now that I had a tangible application, that's when I decided to approach the courts.
I'll do, Sybeth, is that I don't want to finish your voice. Do you have any other comments? Then I'll turn to Dr. Zamchia, because I think I'll come back to you later on. Anything else you want to say at this stage?
At this stage, nothing.
Thank you so much.
For questions from you.
Yeah, so there's one small bit. I know that those who read newspapers now know this. Just confirm for us that you are a bona fide ZANU-PF member and that you are a Zimbabwean.
I am a Zimbabwean and my membership to ZANU-PF is undisputable. There is a lot of evidence. I've worked with a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of leaders. So for someone to come and say that I'm not a member, I don't know what the agenda is, but I'm a full ZANU-PF member, a bona fide.
Thank you so much, Sybeth. I'll ask you to sit, relax, and we will hear the analysis from Philani Zamchia. Dr. Zamchia, please, you can share your screen. We have the time we've agreed to, and then I'll come in and we do Q&A.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Brian, and good evening, viewers. It's always good to be on this platform. And I would also like to recognize my fellow panelist here, Musengezi. I think I'll just try to take 20 minutes, and then I will see whether we can move to questions. I will talk about this court challenge, but I'm more interested in the political aspects of it, especially the implications for the state of intra-party conflict. So perhaps first I'll just try to give a flashback, because we had an almost similar debate about the state of ZANU-PF a month ago. Then from there, I will look at what I think are the big propositions today about internal party democracy, IPD, and then look at the court case itself and the political forces that might be interested in this, both within ZANU-PF and within the state. Then from there, I'll try to talk about the implications, and hope I'll be on time. It's unfortunate that my brother Richard couldn't make it today. So first is just the flashback that on the 9th of September 21, I did a thorough analysis of the state of ZANU-PF as a party right on this platform. And I forcefully argued that ZANU-PF at this interregnum actually faces serious internal contradictions from the presidium to the cell. But you have got a very cohesive state machinery that keeps it breathing. Hence you have a party state. But some became the proverbial doubting Thomases. But what has happened ever since the 9th of September 2021, when we had this discussion right at this Sybeth platform, this is what the state media has not been telling you, and for the sake of time, I'll just be running through. For example, look at these headlines. We won't get in the detail. ZANU-PF is going in court overheating Masimirembwa with chair over vote rigging. This is Harare province. Violence breaks out at ZANU-PF meeting. Under fire, ZANU-PF Manicaland provincial chairman, Mike Madiro. Police tear gas ZANU-PF protesters at party PCC. And I've interviewed these people already. I was in Zimbabwe. Breaking news, chaos at ZANU-PF district headquarters as rival factions clash in Kwekwe. ZANU-PF youth angry over party chaos. And I've also interviewed this youth. ZANU-PF tussling disrupts Rimba RDC 2022 budget meetings. G40 heavy in ZANU-PF, planning to topple Mnangagwa. This was Ziambi, Minister of Justice and Parliamentary Affairs. Just on 6 October 2021, ZANU-PF suspends provincial elections. This is from the ZANU-PF website. ZANU-PF bigwigs question Mnangagwa's legitimacy. Mnangagwa legitimacy conundrum explodes in court battle. So this court case is therefore a culmination of deepening and widening elite discohesion within ZANU-PF. And I think more is still to come before the political climax. But well, within the context of this court case, I think the big proposition I want to make tonight is that internal party democracy is important because the practice of political parties help to structure public deliberations and to foster a healthy democracy for the nation. And also these political parties in Zimbabwe, not just ZANU-PF, they are there to provide linkages between government and the citizens and platforms through which you have the aggregate interests of society being articulated. But more incisively, the process by which decisions are made within political parties can also impact on the establishment of a democratic or oligarchic culture in the wider society. And to me, it is clear that parties that practice democracy, whether you talk about MDC Alliance led by Nelson Chamisa, NCA by Professor Love Madruku, Transform Zimbabwe by Jacob Ngaruvume, MDC-T by Douglas Mwanzora, they are likely to select more popular candidates, have less conflicts, more cohesion, wider scope, and enjoy greater democratic election success and governing performance. But we have been seeing a deficiency of internal party democracy, and why? And I think the iron law of oligarchy helps to explain this deficiency. And by this, I mean a rule by a few elites to protect their power, personal interest at the expense of members that they represent and the broader party goals. And this inclination towards oligarchy in ZANU-PF, I think largely explains what we are seeing today. But let me be clear that party members are not passive victims. They also have agents. Some do it covertly through what James Scott might call everyday forms of resistance, and others might do it more overtly, as Musengezi has done, to challenge such undemocratic internal practices. And coming to the court case, I've read the application, and according to me, it is actually pregnant with facts. There's no doubt that this will open a Pandora's box to lay bare the illegalities associated with President Mnangagwa's rise. I think it is actually much richer than the Mashawire's application that led to Nelson Chamisa being declared an illegitimate leader of the MDC in March 2020 by the Supreme Court. But just like the Mashavira case, there's no doubt that this is not a product of one whiz kid who has just discovered the illegalities. Here, I'm inclined to agree to a certain extent with Magaisa's proposition that perhaps we have a tortoise on the wall. And from my view, the application is a combination of legal minds from within the party and from without, even involving some lawyers who have handled similar cases before. And it's also a product of people with inside information and unlimited access to ZANU-PF's internal documents, including sensitive minutes. And it is an act from people who have been guaranteed some level of state security protection in the dangerous world of Mnangagwa's rule. I think the merits of the case, I'm not a judge, but I think they will be difficult to dismiss, especially given the precedents of the Mashawire case. But knowing the party state that ZANU-PF is, it can widely conjure some technicalities to nip it in the bud. Like number one, local stand issues. They can disown Musengezi. You know, if they can delete people in the voters' roll, they can even delete his name in the cell registers. Number two, they can argue that Musengezi must first exhaust internal remedies. They did it with the basket case. However, in the Mashawira case, the judges were clear that Mashawira had no chance of getting justice within the same system he was fighting. So why not follow the same logic? And number three, they can wildly say 3 years have passed since 2017. Where do you submit? Where were you to submit your grievances? But whatever the technical way out is not my main argument. It is very clear that this will not cure the public interest and the political storm generated by this case. And I think given the state of elite discohesion, internal strife, and contradictions within the elite, the case is now of political interest to more than just one man, to more than just Musengezi, whether he likes it or not. And that interest might be expressed overtly or covertly. I'll look at some of the political forces that might be interested quickly. The Presidium itself in ZANU-PF, Miles Tendi, a professor from Oxford University, has written extensively on VP Chiwenga's presidential ambitions. There has been a verbal agreement that Mnangagwa was going to be a transitional leader, but this is now being shredded almost every day. Some are skeptical about this verbal agreement, whether it was really there or not. But if you listen carefully to Farai, the daughter to Mnangagwa, she was very clear on 28 July that Mnangagwa had agreed, I quote, to serve one term to avoid making mistakes made by Mugabe, close quote. And I'm also told in various interviews that the general is not happy and so are his people. So 5 more years will affect his long-held ambition and his health is not helping matters. You also have senior political members, number 2, who feel that they have been dumped at the Sheikh building without direct access to state patronage. These are former ministers, the likes of Obet Mpofu, who is said to have chaired the kangaroo court, the likes of Patrick Chinamasa, Engobet Rugejo, Paul Mangwana. And perhaps the court case might give them a chance to correct this. 3, you have the war veterans of the 1970s Liberation War, who were arrested for demonstrating for the improvement of their welfare, 31 August and now 25th of October. And what the chairperson of the War Veterans Welfare Pressure Group, Amos Gauke, said is very interesting. Let me quote, "There's nothing new to tell Mnangagwa, unless of course he will be coming to tell us the answers to our grievances. This grandstanding has to be stopped. They talk of shares in mining and a lot of other projects. They speak from affluent hotels, yet a war veteran on the ground is suffering." Then you also have the G40 as a political force. And I don't think they have given up, despite that they are subdued. They haven't given up the political fight. And from my research, they would prefer to either take over or to ensure a more amicable leader is in place. We have already seen that during the DCC elections. And in fact, a Chiwenga president is more ideal to the majority of the G40, at least those I've spoken to, than an ED president. Then you have your purged military commanders who were very crucial during the coup, likes of Major General Sanyatwe and so forth. And you also have the neutralized Central Intelligence Organization itself. The likes of Muzonzini, Changata, Nyakurima, Mudimu, Chinyai, Rusere, Mazoe, Tachiwe, Nira, Gweshe, who are spread all over the country. They were neutralized by the military intelligence during the succession battle. Here you can also read Tendi's works, but they were later axed, but still with links and interest. And the CIO remains largely neutralized, and in the corridors, there are whispers of discontent, and most actually yearn for Mugabe's days. Then you have the non-Karanga ethnic groups who are complaining about the primitive politics of appointments that are based on blood, ethnic, and communal ties, to an extent that if you look at the top brass of the Zimbabwean security, you can be mistaken to think that it's a Moyo and a private security company. So other ethnic groups, they actually feel excluded. They think Mnangagwa and his team have a winner-take-it-all mentality, what they call Chinuchedu. Then finally, you have China. I can tell you that China, in my view, is not so enthusiastic about the 5 more years. For Mnangagwa has been inconsistent, trying to please the West, which is supposed to be seen as the author of his problems, prioritizing paying Western debts rather than Chinese debts. And China's main man in Harare has not been enthusiastic about re-engagement with the West. And that main man is Chiwenga. China might not mind ED, but will be happier with Chiwenga. What then are the implications in short? I think the failure to uphold internal party democracy in ZANU-PF, whether this court case is heard or not, whether Musengezi wins or not, whether Musengezi disappears or survives, or whether he keeps being ill or he recovers, will continue to widen party disunity, deepen elite discohesion, intensify intra-party conflicts, lessen party scope towards 2023 and beyond. And this is not only confined to ZANU-PF. I hope other political parties in Zimbabwe are also taking lessons from this. And this is likely to be expressed mainly through one or a combination of these 4 Ds. 1, deviation, where ZANU-PF party members can deliberately vote for another presidential candidate as a way to express disgruntlement. We saw this in 2008 when there was the so-called Boram Sango, after Robert Mugabe refused to step down during the 2006 Goromon's conference. But we have also seen this more recently in the 2018 general elections, when Chamisa got more votes than Mnangagwa, but lesser votes than ZANU-PF. Then you have de-alignment as an implication, where party supporters can converge around a younger person, more charismatic, but with deep roots in ZANU-PF, to run either as an independent or through another vehicle. Those who remember can think of the Simbamakon scenario in 2000. You know, Dengu, who is in ZANU-PF and with great links in the party, has already written that, I quote, "Your Excellence, given your advanced age and the workload required to turn around the nation, a nation as broken as ours, it is advised that you do not seek re-election as state president in 2023, close quote. By then, Mnangagwa will be 82 years old officially. If you want the full story, you can read Dengu's book, The Bridge, Pathway to New Zimbabwe. And Dengu is Chiwenga's homeboy. Then you can have 3, defection, where party supporters can openly adopt new party identification, or pre-election coalitions are likely to emerge from Chamisa's Citizens Convergence for Change. And 4th is de-branding, where you have the party leaders who can continuously and systematically delegitimize Mnangagwa and question his integrity in the public eye. We have already heard strong words from war veterans apologizing for terrorizing citizens. And this script, we have heard it before, being played by Matema Danda Mahia and Mutangwa, among other war veteran readers. We have also heard from former Youth League members on corruption, like Senengam. We have also seen internally leaked photos of rejection by children of Mnangagwa, good living in a sea of poverty, primitive attacks on the opposition, misogynistic and barbaric attacks on the girl child like Joanna, Netsai, Cecilia, all meant to systematically delegitimize Mnangagwa till he is wafer thin politically. But Mnangagwa and team will not sit down and be swallowed like the proverbial Kariba carpenter fish with their eyes wide open. Remember, he's a crocodile. He's KGB trained, knows how to capture and manipulate state and non-state institutions, including the judiciary, which is very crucial here. He's also shrewd and a dangerous political operator. So any political fight will therefore be bloody, in my view. And for some of his opponents, life will be short, nasty, and brutal. So that is why, in terms of way forward, I say Zimbabwe needs an urgent, all-inclusive national dialogue to find solutions based on the founding values and principles enshrined in the Constitution before an implosion before our very eyes. Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you so much, Zamshia, for a tour de force that looks at various issues. I want to press you on a few things so that, and also I see there are one or two lawyers and others, political scientists on here that I will ask to chime in. When we're looking at the grounds you said may be the basis for challenging the application. So if I understand correctly, the application is based on the argument that an illegality cannot found a legal outcome, right? And that anything based on an illegality is itself either voidable or void ab initio. So the events, as I understand them, is that you got the 2017 coup, and then you had the opposition join the merry-go-round with the purported impeachment. Then you had supposedly, concurrent with that, a process that purported to recall Mugabe at the, and then later on the extraordinary Congress. Post those processes, there's been an Escodini conference, which may not have been elective, but where Mnangagwa was confirmed as candidate for 2023. Then you had the bloody July 30 election. As a political scientist, does the confirmation by the Constitutional Court of Mnangagwa's victory within the 2018 election have any significance? Is that tainted by the illegality that the applicant is raising, or is that a separate matter?
Thank you, Brian. I agree with you in terms of your chronicling of events. In terms of your question, I think that Mnangagwa has been challenged before in the courts, but it was based on the national constitution in terms of whether he had respected the national constitution. But if you look at this case, it is actually the first where the applicant is focusing on the party constitution itself. That is the party constitution that was abrogated. So I don't think that it would be fair for the courts to then relate this case to those other cases and say that this issue has been resolved. I think we still need to hear the merits of the application, because he's using the ZANU-PF constitution and not the national constitution. And having said that as well, the fact that Mnangagwa went into a general election and then he became president, even if we are to stretch it to that extent, I don't think that it's convincing. Why? Because if you look at the Mashavira case that was brought about in order to dislodge Nelson Chamisa as the MDC president, as the legitimate MDC president, a general election had also occurred. And the judges were very clear in their ruling that Nelson Chamisa had entered into a presidential election. He had popular vote, and that one day he might actually become the president of Zimbabwe. But they went on to say the very fact that he might become the president of Zimbabwe means that he must learn to respect internal party democratic processes. And if you look at this case, it actually then becomes worse, because Mnangagwa is not even assuming to be president, but is actually the president of the country at the moment. And I think then it becomes worse.
So my question was not clear. My question is, from your understanding of the case, it essentially only applies to his legitimacy in the ZANU-PF and not his legitimacy as state president. Yes. That you may have a situation where, if this case, in the unlikely situation, succeeds, Mnangagwa will be declared no longer ZANU president, but he would still be the president of Zimbabwe, which would take you to the second bit, which was ill-advisedly attempted with respect to Mugabe, which is a recall. So I'm asking you, describe to us how this would play out, so that when Zimbabweans are engaging the case, they understand the full implications. If this case succeeds, and let's assume all the chicanery that we have is not there, there is no question around locus standi, no question around effluxion or expiry of time, and etc. The court goes, it succeeds. What result should Zimbabweans expect?
I think we have to look at it not in a unidimensional manner, but at possible scenarios, because this is politics at play. I think the first thing that we have to understand is that the current constitution does not allow Zimbabweans to elect a president mid-term directly, citizens. It is the political party that has to elect its own candidate to finish off the term of a predecessor. So given that context, if then Mnangagwa is said to be not the legitimate leader of ZANU-PF, it then becomes very difficult for him to claim to be the legitimate president of Zimbabwe, because initially he was put in by the very same political party processes which would have failed the constitutional and democratic test. So where will he be able to stand on? And I'm sure, given the political forces that I've spoken about, once there's that ruling, there is a very big possibility that his party will definitely recall him in one way or the other. So it's a big case. He has to fight for his political life.
Okay. So just one more small question, then we open it up to the audience. If you reflect on it in the most ideal of circumstances, if the internal process that made him leader was ill-constituted, it also means that the process by which those who were removed post his ascendancy occurred was also illegitimate. It also means the selection of a replacement for Mugabe was illegitimate, that therefore the de facto position or the de jure position would favor Mpoko or some such character. So play this out for us. We are taking the most idealistic position from the scenarios you gave, okay? You are saying, the applicant saying, all the processes around. So the party processes were many that were ill-constituted and not convened on the basis of that constitution. What does, as you unravel and scramble this omelet, what other dimensions come into play?
Yeah, the dangerous part here, Brian, is that there is precedence, and I think that our legal system does pay due diligence to precedents. Unlike in Mozambique, for example, look, the Mashavire case, it played out almost the same way. Nelson Chamisa's appointments were declared null and void. Everything that he had done was declared null and void, legally. And this is the Supreme Court of Zimbabwe. So I don't think that the Supreme Court should try to veer away from that precedence. If they arrive at the decision that Mnangagwa's ascendance to power was unconstitutionally within the party, then everything else also become null and void. And the funny part of it here is that everything we have to revert to the 2014 party structures that were there. And the same applies to the MDC. I don't know what's magical about 2014 as well, because in that Mashavire case, everything had to revert to 2014. And yes, you have then Mpoko supposedly coming in. But if you listened to my slide on the response, here you are dealing with very shrewd political operators who only pay lip service to democracy and constitutionalism. And when politics and law clash, you should expect a vicious response from the Mnangagwa camp. That is not only based on the legal niceties. I think
we'll come to the Mnangagwa
for a possibility where the legal niceties will be thrown out the window.
Doc, we'll come to the Mnangagwa case. We'll come to the more realistic position. I think that for political discourse, because you're an academic, let's play out the idealistic position, right? And so help Zimbabweans understand the idealistic position. Where does it land the nation and what would be its implications? Then we can have a discussion, open up to the floor about what people think is the more realistic position. It's, yeah.
The idealistic is that you go back, if there's such a ruling in the favor of Musengezi, you go back to the 2014 structures, and Mpoko obviously will be called on to hold the proper party congress. And there's precedence. We have seen this happening within the MDC. Despite that, when it played out, actually, it wasn't just about the legal niceties, but about the politics. It actually means that all the expulsions of the so-called G40 will be null and void, and they will be back in the fold.
Okay, and hence your sense that, so what we will have is you will have Grace Mugabe back in the fold, G40 back in the fold, Chombo, the Kasukueres, Professor Jonathan Moyes, all these people back in the fold. But here is my question. What would the decision, since the court pronounced itself, or would the decision taken to expel the current president of the country, whose legitimacy in ZANU has been questioned, Mnangagwa, what will be the position on that? What is likely to be the position? I'm just saying, if you put everything, yeah.
Can you come again? You're saying the position on, I didn't quite get that.
No, I'm saying before we went to yes, I take the point. Mnangagwa was not trained by the KGB, but by the Chinese. If we take, the point is this, at the point, until the point that you hold this meeting that Musengezi says it was wrongly constituted or unconstitutional, certain precipitous facts had, or events had occurred. Emmerson Mnangagwa had been kicked out of ZANU or suspended, whichever is the factual position. So when you say we go back to 2014, that means we use ZANU-PF 2014 structures and those elected at the Congress. But going back also means you go back to what the position was before the illegal or unconstitutional actions were taken. I'm asking you, what would this mean vis-a-vis Mnangagwa's expulsion from ZANU and others who had been suspended?
Yeah, what that would mean is that Mnangagwa was suspended post the 2014 structures. So he was suspended by Robert Mugabe himself. He was still in charge as the first secretary of the party, though his power was beginning to wane. So if you go back to the 2014 structures, you then have to go back to the 2014 structures of the party, and Mnangagwa is probably somebody in there, but he is not as powerful as the person who then gets suspended by Robert Mugabe. And remember that Mnangagwa's issue has been brought before the courts, I mean, in terms of state. And the courts also ruled that his suspension was null and void. If you remember very well, you're a lawyer. I think it was Tueshe, but he then didn't go on to give the substantive reasons as to why he made such a judgment. So what I'm trying to do here, Brian, is to say that we should not conflate these cases, or
it's
trying
not
to build the ideal and trying to build an ideal.
Doc, hear me out, Doc. Yeah, no, hear me out, Doc. I think that you have a position, but trying to match it to Musengezi may limit what the issue is. The issue is, if you say the meetings that determined Mnangagwa's leadership were unconstitutional, that means those meetings could not have readmitted him, right?
Yeah.
You are saying,
yes,
Tueshe's judgment, until it is challenged, answers my question, that as long as Tueshe says the suspension was unlawful and there was no coup, the position is this, whatever comes out of this case, will not question the legitimacy of the coup, will not question Mnangagwa's judgment. So I think it's, what we're trying to do is for Zimbabweans who don't daily engage this issue, to make sure that these gaps are filled. That the only thing that therefore makes Mnangagwa part of the cast is the Tueshe judgment. If it had not been for the Tueshe judgment, Mnangagwa would have been lawfully suspended by his party, right? But the Tueshe judgment, because there is a questioning of that suspension. So that's the point I was asking you to clarify for the audience on
Brian, but I also want to say, if the judgment is in favor of Musengezi, I think we should admit that real power goes back to ZANU-PF.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at. Okay, so because now you've given us your ideal. What is your most realistic?
ZANU-PF is the one which we have the power now. They decide to recall him based on whatever the court would have prescribed. Then I think even the Chiweshe rulings becomes inconsequential because we don't directly elect a president halfway, no matter what happens. So ZANU-PF becomes the key major player here.
Okay.
In terms of what might happen, it depends on the convergence of the political forces that I've spoken about. If they are going to converge, what might happen is that ZANU-PF will reclaim its power and they will recall him. And as I told you, there are so many centers of power that are not happy, both within the party and within the state institutions. So there's a real possibility there that Mnangagwa might be recalled by his own party if Musengezi wins this case.
Okay.
But this is different from the Mugabe scenario whereby Mugabe had lost completely control of the entire state apparatus. Mnangagwa hasn't completely lost that at this political juncture. And therefore, if they're gonna try that, there will be a fight back. And the fight back this time will be bloody because both factions have access to the armory. Hence my earlier call that what is needed is a sustainable solution before an implosion happens. It's not going to be a walk in the park.
Okay. So the last question is, what are you calling an inclusive dialogue in the context of this case? If Mnangagwa wins the case, why would he be dialoguing and with who?
My call for an inclusive dialogue is not in the context of this case. I'm saying what we have been seeing happening in Zimbabwe, not just within ZANU-PF, even outside it. It actually shows that there's a deep-seated crisis in Zimbabwe, deep-seated political crisis in Zimbabwe. And these are just but mere symptoms. These are just but mere symptoms.
Can I push you back? I hear academics say this a lot. 1963, ZANU-PF splits from ZAPU, big crisis, none of them dies. 1972, post the PS Commission. 1977, thereabouts, Frolizi, Nari Rebellion, first 1980s clashes, 1985, the Jobo Mugabe standoffs, the pre-coup standoff. What has been consistent is, notwithstanding the depth of the perceived crisis, the governing elite have somehow found a minimum platform for building consent and some form of to continue governing, even in hostility. Is your sense that the other moments are different? And if so, why? Because they've been deep, they've been bloody, they've been threats of violence. Yeah.
Yes, that's a very good intervention there, Brian. Let me say that this is not ahistorical. ZANU-PF has always had internal divisions. If you read Struggles Within the Struggle by Masipula Stole, you would understand that better in addition to what you are saying. But I think what is happening at this juncture is for the first time that you are in a constitutional democracy and we have had a military coup, not in the Bushian courts, but in a constitutional democracy. And ZANU-PF has to deal with this for the first time, and that military coup has not been cured. And from studies across the globe, coups begets coups. How you bring stability is then very, very important. But we also should also understand that when you had these divisions, you also had Robert Mugabe trying to contain them until a certain point where there was an implosion where he couldn't. And we haven't seen even Mugabe in a constitutional democracy being challenged then in a court of law that is legitimate and so forth, despite the divisions. I spoke about the Goromonzi conference in 2006 when Mugabe wanted to extend his tenure by 2 more years and so forth. But does Mnangagwa have the authority, the power, the legitimacy, and even the charm to contain these divisions? I've also given the context in terms of what they've been trying to agree to or not. We probably cannot answer that decisively at this moment because it remains an open research question. But that is what maketh it different at this historic juncture. Because you could take the Nari rebellion, put them in a pit, just bury them there, and that was it, the end of it. The context is quite different. Does Mnangagwa have the authority, the power, the legitimacy, even the charm to contain this?
Okay, so let's, so clearly what you are saying is the deep elite discohesion, as Tony says in the chart, and you are saying the power is almost evenly balanced militarily. The battle will be for the souls and hearts of Zimbabweans. If with this level of discohesion you go to an election, you've given the 4 Ds of what might happen. My last small question to you, and I open for the floor, I'd said the last time, is all this drama is only possible because of the military factor. The military participating openly, overtly in the internal affairs of the political party in violation of the constitution. And in your listing of which forces, you listed security or the securocrats. Whether it goes for Musengezi or it goes against Musengezi, where are you locating the military factor, both in terms of the conclusion of the ZANU-PF internal question and the broader national dialogue that you're talking about?
Okay. Yeah, if we look at the military coup that happened in 2017, I remember very well Chiwenga saying it clearly that the military would not hesitate to step in, and that meant into party affairs. So I think there's no way in my analysis that Emmerson Mnangagwa at that historic juncture could have been president of the Republic of Zimbabwe without the military intervention, without the military actually abrogating what I think are its constitutional duties, with all due respect to Chiweshe's ruling, of which we haven't seen the substantive reasons, why he made such a ruling. So yes, the military is key, and the military is actually to blame for this state of affairs. And I don't think that the military should ever step in to resolve civilian issues. And then when we talk at the military at the moment, the fact that they are divided, you have Mnangagwa, who has appointed individuals to whom he has ethnic and communal ties to, and even family ties to a certain extent, as the top brass of the military, the Moyos, the Sivandas, and so forth. But the military, the institution itself, remains a headache to both Mnangagwa and the appointed commanders. Some of them had to be recalled from elsewhere. There's no doubt that Chiwenga had tried to build a military institution in his own image for a long period. I think since 2003 up to now. So the question will be, will the military, if they decide to move as an institution or move as the elite commanders, either way, it will be blood. And I also want to say that most of the coups that we have witnessed on the global stage usually come from below, that is from the institution. The Zimbabwe one is one of those outliers where you have about 198 people, elite commanders deciding the fate. Then lastly, about the military and dialogue, I think that there are two ways to do militarized states like Zimbabwe. Based on my studies on Latin America, if you look at South America, it's either you have to resolve the military question from below. You have to mobilize the civilians to defeat the military, a revolution, in short. Or you have to sit down and have a negotiated pact with the generals. Which way can Zimbabwe go? The most ideal, now quoting from your oasis of wisdom in terms of the scenarios, the most ideal would be for the civilians to say enough is enough in a peaceful, non-violent manner, as provided for by Section 59 of the Zimbabwean Constitution, and resolve this question once and for all. But if I do an analysis of the balance of forces in Zimbabwe at the moment, I do not see a revolution happening tomorrow or the day after. Therefore, contrary to most of my colleagues, I still think you need to sit down. You need to sit down with those military elites who have vast fears, which they need to be addressed and have some kind of acted transition. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Dr. Zamchia. Colleagues who have joined the call, you are all experts, some of you with deep knowledge of the military, deep knowledge of civil society. I'd like to open the conversation up to the rest of you. Fascinating conversation with Dr. Zamchia about his take on the balance of forces. Please do indicate, if you want to speak, indicate in the chat, or raise your hand so that we can avail you the opportunity. The floor is open. Administrator, please help us open the floor as soon as people indicate. I don't like silence, so what I'm going to do is
Sybeth is back. Maybe you want to say something?
Sybeth, please go ahead. You're on mute, Sybeth.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes. I can hear you now.
All right. I didn't hear the question.
You've listened to Dr. Zamchia. So the question was whether you have any comment, something you want to say after listening to Zamchia's, Philani Zamchia?
No, I'm not going to make any comments today.
Okay.
These are more comments pertaining the matter that is still before the court.
It's before the court, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, I'm not able to give any comments in relation to what you are commenting about.
Okay. So Sybeth, thank you so much. The man, yeah.
I'd like to ask a question, maybe. Is the case is in the court tomorrow, Sybeth, is it?
Beg your pardon?
I believe the case is in court tomorrow.
Not tomorrow. We are still waiting for.
I heard that from the ZANU-PF. It's in court tomorrow. That's what the ZANU-PF has said.
We are still waiting for the respondents to file their affidavit.
Yeah. What's in your view as a lawyer that you are, and also Brian as a lawyer, what is the likely line of defense that ZANU-PF will take in this matter? Can they simply say, for example, which are likely, it was a coup, that's it.
I've heard some fellow comrades. Most of them, I've actually worked with them. They are trying to disown me. So I don't know how they are going to do that, because there is a lot of evidence supporting that I'm a member of the party. So I think they would try to use the technicality, but I don't think that will work. There is a lot of evidence supporting a membership.
Brian, am I correct to say that whether they disown Musengezi or not, the papers are before the court on their own merits? The court challenge is there. Can the attempt, which has already been made, of disowning Musengezi work in this case?
No, so their basis, which is what Zamchia was saying, and I think what Musengezi is saying, if a litigant brings a matter to the court, the first basis to determine is whether the litigant has a legal right on the face of it. That's what we call, he has legal standing, locus standi in judicio, on judicial. If it is with respect to internal processes of a party, the first line of attack is whether or not you are a bona fide paid up member of the party. And if you are a bona fide paid up member of the party, that falls away. The second line relates to whether the unlawful action was ever condoned, and if it could, in terms of the Constitution, be condoned by subsequent duly constituted gatherings of the party. But we don't want to preempt these arguments. Otherwise, you end up giving people things to argue if they didn't have those sort of arguments. Either way, there are many technical reasons why a dispute can be raised. The fact that a dispute is raised does not mean it will succeed. Litigants always try to raise technical issues as a way of avoiding the merits of the case. Yeah. Ibo, if you allow me, I don't know. I see Freeman here, Freeman, and I see Reward, and I also saw Professor Moyo. Do you care to make one or two observations as observers and people who've listened to Zamchia on what your take would be, either on the balance of forces, what the implications are for the judiciary, for civil military, party military, and state relations, and etc. Reward, Freeman, or Professor Moyo? Hello, I'm trying to see if any of the colleagues here are going to take up my offer. Professor Moyo.
What are you asking exactly? I mean, we all have come here to listen. When you ask a trio, it's very difficult for a trio to give you an answer in some chorus form, But I'm not sure. I think. Thank you for giving us me an opportunity. But I'm not sure. Given the topic, that I take it is about the case in relation to intra-party politics, more that than its legal aspects. But I'm also a very interested person, having been affected by the circumstances giving rise to this application. So I'm not sure exactly what you want us, the three of us, you are inviting to address. But in general terms, I think this is a very interesting development, and we have the MDC or the Supreme Court judgment in the MDC case to thank for this situation. I think it's a very interesting development because really in Zimbabwe, from my experience, for all the years I was active in ZANU-PF, there was no single occasion I felt that the party was a legal or a constitutional entity. I was always very struck by the ignorance of our collective selves, either the ignorance of the Constitution or the contempt of the Constitution. I really honestly don't remember, either as a member of a cell, a branch, a district, inter-district, a province, central committee, and Politburo, or even Congress, the highest policy-making body. I don't remember an occasion when we were seized with legal issues, or when we were worried and bothered that what we are doing has legal implications, first and foremost, within the party, and secondly, against the backdrop of the Constitution, the national Constitution. So when you look at the minutes that Musengezi has put or attached to his application of the 19th of November 2017 meeting, what is very striking about that or those minutes is that there is absolutely no concern or even thought that the momentous decisions that are being made have constitutional implications. There's not even an attempt to raise any constitutional question or to say we are taking decision A, B, C, D in terms of this or that section of the constitution of the party. It's like a group, let's get together. Now that we've come together, let's find one of us who is the most senior among us to chair this meeting. Let's make these decisions and so forth. And in a way, for me, that is very consistent with the practice, the political culture of political parties in Zimbabwe. They are political parties. They are not legal entities. They are not constitutional entities. They act with political authority and so forth. So I find this a very interesting case for that reason, that finally this culture that is very deep-seated in Zimbabwean political practice is coming under legal spotlight. And for me, I see the MDC case as having been made in anticipation of this one. I think the judgment of the Supreme Court is more applicable to this one. These are the facts relevant to that, that judgment than the MDC facts. There may be some similar facts there, but I find this very interesting because hopefully it will help us deal with a very serious problem in our political culture, especially given that the national constitution makes certain assumptions about the political party that provides the candidate or the person who ends up being the president of the country. So I'm not sure, Brian, what if there are some questions. But since I'm talking, I heard Pilani referring to the Chiweshe ruling and raising questions in response to what you were probing as to its likely implication on this case. As far as I'm aware, there is no Chiweshe ruling, and there will not be a Chiweshe ruling because it was an order by consent. I mean, the whole thing was just a friend. There were no parties that were, having in any dispute. They just made that application in order to say that Mnangagwa expulsion as vice president of the country had been of no legal force or effect. But it was a very clear judgment about his vice presidency of Zimbabwe. It had nothing to do with his vice presidency of the party. And the issue of his vice presidents of the party did not arise. And one does not necessarily have to be a member of a political party to be appointed vice president. The constitution of the country is very clear as to how the president appoints a vice president. So his issue of the vice presidency was not addressed. That's why the minutes which have been attached to the application address that question up front. That meeting of the Central Committee purports, first and foremost, it does two things before they get into the various issues they did. One, they say who should chair the meeting. It's an important question because the constitution of ZANU-PF is very clear about first, who should convene a Central Committee meeting, and second, who should chair a Central Committee meeting. It's not a bambazonke. So they then address that issue by simply saying, we will appoint Obert Mbofo because he's the most senior among us. And then secondly, they decided to find that the expulsion of Mnangagwa as vice president of ZANU-PF and first secretary of ZANU-PF and a member of ZANU-PF was, well, they don't even say it was illegal. They actually say we are reinstating him. So they reinstated him as a member of ZANU-PF, reinstated him as vice president and second secretary of ZANU-PF. There was no deliberation. They didn't even say he has applied to be reinstated. They just moved to reinstate him. They did that because they were aware that the court case, the Chiweshe case on the 23rd of November, which had not even happened, by the way. When they met to do this, the Chiweshe ruling was not there. The meeting is on the 19th of November, 2017, and the Chiweshe case or the Chiweshe order is on the 23rd of November. So they didn't, I think in their view, they wanted him to be eligible for the presidency as a successor, as a sitting vice president. And they moved on that day to dismiss Mpoko. So they just wanted to leave one person, Mnangagwa, as the one qualifying for the presidency. But there is no ruling. We won't get a ruling on that. There is an order. I think what is significant, I heard you, Brian, raising what I thought was an interesting point as to whether subsequent, if it is found that the Central Committee meeting was convened illegally, it was conducted illegally, and it made illegal resolutions, were there subsequent structures of the party or meetings that could condone or did condone these illegalities? Well, what is interesting, at least in terms of Mnangagwa's leadership of the party, is that there has not been any such meeting since that Central Committee meeting. Even the extraordinary Congress of December that same year, 2017, was not called subsequent to this Central Committee. It had been called already, and it had been called, in terms of the ZANU-PF Constitution, an extraordinary Congress is called for a specific purpose. So that one had already been convened, and it had not been convened to condone a Central Committee appointment. They were even so, I don't know whether one would say audacious or crazy, because they didn't say that the Central Committee elected Mnangagwa, and that election was going to be condoned by a later Congress. They said they were appointing him. And the minutes used the word appointing, that the Central Committee is appointing. Now, the Central Committee can't be, in ZANU-PF, in terms of the ZANU-PF Constitution, an appointing authority. But it purported to appoint him, and Mnangagwa, when he was addressing the extraordinary Congress that had been called by Mugabe for a different purpose, thanked the Central Committee for appointing him president, and said he was hoping, expecting the extraordinary Congress to ratify, he used the word ratify, that appointment. But what is significant is that the president and first secretary of ZANU-PF can only be elected by a Congress. And it's an election. The process requires nominations from the provinces, and an election at the Congress at an appointed time. This didn't happen. There was no province that even purported to nominate him or even to recommend the endorsement or ratification of his appointment by the Central Committee. The reason this goes back to 2014 is because that's when there was the last Congress, and the ZANU-PF, in terms of its 2014 constitution, is a one center of power party. The powers for the vice presidents are no longer elected as they were before 2014. Since 2014, they are appointed by the president and first secretary of the party. The expectation from 2014 was that in terms of the constitution of ZANU-PF, the next Congress was scheduled for 2019. And they have not had a Congress since 2014. Even the 2019 Congress, which, in answer to your question, the question whether the illegalities could have been subsequently condoned, I think the 2019 Congress would have done that if it had been properly convened by ZANU-PF, and ZANU-PF being the first respondent in the case. But ZANU-PF didn't convene a Congress in 2019. And what you have since 2017, since the 19th of November 2017, you have a series of continuing illegalities. And to borrow a phrase I learned from you, Brian, you have a festival of illegalities, continuing festivals of illegalities up to now. And I think my last comment would relate.
Yeah, Brian, I just
on a relevant the sorry.
No, sorry, I thought you were finished, Jonathan. Carry on.
Sorry? I was just making my last point to say that, Brian, asked a very important question about why now. He was asking the applicant. In fact, I just want to make two quick points. One is on that one, and the last one I want to make, and I'm just thinking about now, is this this tortoise on the lamppost theory, which I heard Pilani talking about. But Brian, the question, why now? I think this is someone who found himself part of these issues, and although the application came when I myself was not available, I was not active, we had taken time off to remember my daughter. But I since have found myself in conversations with colleagues and so forth. Clearly, quite clearly, it would have been impossible to imagine this application coming at any time before last year's Supreme Court judgment on the Mashavira case. I think it could only have been after that case, but if there is an illegality, there is no time set to remedy illegality. And you can seek to remedy an illegality, because this is, I heard somebody talking about 3 years, and I think it was Pilani. When you look, there's no prescription for a declarator. There's no prescription to correct an illegality. You correct it when you become aware of it. And you should not only be aware of it, but I think you should also have reasonable expectation that if you approach the court, you will be heard. In this case, it will really be, I know that Zimbabweans have become disillusioned and really given up on the judiciary in Zimbabwe. But this case will embarrass any court. I mean, it will be very interesting to see which courageous judge wants to confirm that they are compromised and are happy to make some political decision or to prove that they are indeed compromised. I think this is as good a time as any to correct an illegality. It's a continuing illegality, and a continuing illegality can be stopped at any time in its continuum, along the line. That is my view. Lastly, I think, and I've read this from Magaisa, and I heard from Dr. Zamchia. This idea that when a Zimbabwean brings a legal action, they've been sent by someone is unhelpful. We cannot look at each other as citizens and describe ourselves or call other citizens tortoises. I think this is completely unhelpful. But I understand the spirit that when an action that has implications for all of us comes up, and then all of us as citizens, and we express interest, it doesn't mean that there was a big room somewhere where people sat and planned and conspired, and then they sent this one courageous guy. For me, I'm so thankful that this application has someone like Sybeth Musengezi, who speaks for himself, who is more, so far, he has been the most articulate person in explaining the case. I was really, I felt proud as a Zimbabwean listening to him in his interview with Peter Ndoro on SABC. And that interview disproved, or at the very least challenged, this tortoise theory that somebody has just put a tortoise on a lamppost, and then you have to find out who this person is and so forth. You might as well call anyone who brings any litigation in court, you might as well call them a tortoise, you know. So no, Dr. Zamcha, I don't think we are dealing with a tortoise here. I think we are dealing with one out of many members of ZANU-PF, current and former, who've been affected by a major development in the party, and there is a natural meeting of minds or meeting of interest. You didn't bargain for this, Brian, when you asked me to speak, but there you are. You took a risk asking a politician to
Once a politician, always a politician. Ibo.
I'm glad, Brian, that Jonathan is coming on this. But also, I want to echo his point. I too was very impressed with Sybeth Musengezi's interview with Peter Ndoro. That was the first time I saw the young man in action. And certainly he's no tortoise. I've since spoken to him a number of times. He's a serious young man. I think that we have to respect and extol brave citizens, especially young ones, such as he is. And it was really in deference to him, representing as he does the youth and people who want things done correctly, that we held this session. But I remember, Brian, on our platform, you talking, as Jonathan just quoted you, this celebration of illegalities and what have you. The one thing I remember very clearly on the 19th of November 2017 was this Central Committee meeting, hurriedly called, and people were very emotional. I remember people like Mangwana and Mnangagwa dancing, and it was the end of Mugabe, so to speak. But then that night, Sunday night, to be brief, the import of that Sunday was this: that the statement that Mugabe read that night was twofold in import. One was to say, look, the coup, or by implication, the coup was a misunderstanding which has now been dispelled. And secondly, that I, as president of the party and first secretary, will be chairing a Congress 2 weeks hence, and all else will be put in order on that occasion. Now, for you lawyers, and indeed for Sybeth if he's there, and for Jonathan, my point was that this Central Committee meeting on the Sunday afternoon was ipso facto declared null and void by that statement. A statement which, it appears, was prepared by the military itself. I don't know to what extent that detail is contained in the court application, but I thought it would be a very significant detail, anyhow, in terms of what happened on that day, the 19th. Your comments, please.
Thank you, Ibo. There are several lawyers here. Any comments? I'd asked a few people, including Freeman, lawyers, political scientists, street scientists like myself, A-level students, AK-level students. Jonathan, are you coming back on this point or Zamchia?
Which point?
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Let me try to. Can you hear me, Brian?
Loud and clear.
The spotlight was on Professor Jonathan. No, these are interesting inputs. I just want to say, I think with all due respect to Alex Magaisa, I think his theory about tortoise on the lamp does not necessarily mean that he's demeaning citizens as tortoises without agents. I think what he's trying to say is that perhaps there are convergence of forces from behind. And I am very, very confident, and I'm also very aware that there are other people who are interested in this case, who have been working with Musengezi as well. But that doesn't literally mean that he's a tortoise, he remains a citizen. There are meetings that have been held in Samora Machel Avenue. We've done research, we know who has made inputs into this. But I just wanted to make it clear that it's not about demeaning citizens. It's just a matter of saying perhaps there are other people who are interested, and I know there are other people who are interested who have been working with Musengezi by name. Maybe we can say it another day. And I think that I made it very clear also that I've read the application, and that based on the merits of the application and my own understanding of political events, it is very clear that Musengezi has a very, very strong case. It actually puts the judiciary's credibility to test. You cannot dispute the facts that he actually raises. But the point I was trying to put across, it was in terms of what ZANU-PF can conjure. You know, they can make up things. They've done that. They have done that before. They can actually disown him to say that he's not our member. We have already seen Tafaz Wangwadi, the director of information, George Charamba, all trying to disown him. But the evidence weighs heavily against them, because if you look at the cell registers, his name is there. He has participated in ZANU-PF primary elections before. And though he lost, that doesn't make him not a member of ZANU-PF. He also has got his membership cards before 2017 and post 2017. But I'm talking here in terms of when politics clashes with law. According to ZANU-PF, politics must always prevail. And also just to carry I was trying to make it clear that this is an unprecedented case, and it will be unfair for the judges to make reference to the Jewish order or ruling, whatever you call it, because this is about the party and not about the state. And as a citizen, even though they might conjure some technicalities, I still think that this is a matter of great public interest, and that it must be heard based on its merits rather than being dismissed on conjured technicalities. Let me then say that what I see here is not necessarily the legal fights, but the political fights that are unfolding within ZANU-PF. What I said on the 9th of September 2021, that there's elite discohesion within ZANU-PF, serious internal contradictions. And this case, whatever happens to it legally, it's gonna lead to one or a combination of the 4 Ds that I spoke about: the deviation, de-alignment, defection, and the systematic de-branding of Emmerson Mnangagwa as the president. And I agree with Professor Jonathan Moyo on the point that there was not even any consideration of whether what ZANU-PF was doing during the coup was constitutional or not. Certain individuals became a law unto themselves. And this aspect of internal party democracy is very, very important, especially in a context where midterm citizens are not allowed to elect their president directly. I think internal party democracy is very, very important across all the political parties. Then lastly, I think we should not also misinterpret each other. Because when I said ED is KGB trained, I meant that, and I still mean that. I mean in terms of the style of his politics, in terms of how he deals with his enemies, in terms of how he understands the intelligence. To me, is KGB trained. I wasn't making reference to the physical training. And of course, because Brian was saying lastly, and Professor Jonathan Moyo was saying lastly, I'm also glad that Professor Jonathan Moyo has brought out an important point that he also has an interest in the matter because he was definitely affected by it. And I think what was done to them was unconstitutional. It was injustice. But then it brings in the bigger point I was talking about earlier, that you got all these political forces that are now interested in this case, whether covertly or overtly, and how they will react is gonna shape and define the political future. So this case is now beyond the brave, brilliant young citizen who is Musengezi. I applaud him for that. It has generated massive political interest from serious political forces. But don't forget, Mnangagwa is a master of capturing some of these state institutions. Thanks, Brian.
You know, Ibo, I had asked Freeman. I can't see Freeman anymore. Freeman.
There's Tony there, hand is up.
Okay, please, Tony, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi. I'm sad that this is not being listened to by a very, very large audience, because I think it's raising a range of issues that are very important. Some of those that you raised, Brian, Jonathan's raised them, Phil's raised them. But we tend to, as a nation, we kind of walk past our history. 6 weeks after some event, we forget it. But I'm looking at your comment that you made to Phil, is if the court ruling says, let's go back to 2014, and then we now have to begin to start thinking about ZANU-PF constitution, the national constitution, Chiweshi's judgment, which, as I understand from Jonathan, follows the decision by an ad hoc committee within ZANU-PF to reinstate him, that he can then use to say that he's no longer dismissed from the party and therefore is a legitimate vice president, and then Chiweshi's subsequent judgment that says, actually, constitutionally, the military have a legal right to intervene in civilian affairs when they think civilian affairs are going on. All of a sudden, around this case, all of these issues are beginning to emerge. And in mine, and I'm no lawyer and I'm certainly no political scientist, but I think what Phil's beginning to say is that we are in a massive constitutional political crisis. And if the judges do rule in favor of Musengezi, then all of these other things are going to start to unpack rapidly, very quickly. We didn't challenge, nobody's challenged the Chiweshi judgment on the coup. Malaba dismissed it on a technicality, but nobody's gone back to say, actually, can we have a proper constitutional ruling about whether the military are entitled to intervene in this particular way? So all of a sudden, what we thought we packed away as history very neatly is beginning to bubble up in a particular way, right? With very serious and dangerous implications. And I understand what Phil's saying, that sometimes when these things happen, well, force majeure just becomes the only way out of this mess. And that's a very frightening prospect. But it's a complicated issue that I think too few people are understanding. For me, it's a bit like the understanding of what happened in the 2018 election. You know, I mean, I think Jonathan unpacked it extremely well. And we're running into another election where everybody seems to assume that all of the things that were observed in those things have been resolved, and they haven't. So all of these things are bubbling under the surface. And it's sad that we're not beginning to generate the energy around not just Musengezi, but how its implications are for internal democracy in political parties, how political parties capture constitutions, what's the relationship between the national constitution and political party constitutions. And this really needs a lot of unpacking, and unpacking for the ordinary citizens, because they need to know this is the background in which they're marching to an election, and a very, very dodgy election is coming up. You know, it's very much a make or break election for quite a long time here. So I want to thank all the speakers who've there, yourself and everyone else, for beginning to unsurface these issues. And I hope that, you know, I wish the journalists were here, were picking it up and beginning to spin this out there in a particular, in much simpler ways for everybody. Thank you.
I think, colleagues, Ivo, tell me when we're due to close. I think we'll take one or two other comments.
10 minutes to go. We can close in 5 minutes. We can start winding up.
Yeah, okay. We've got several colleagues here. I have called on a few. I saw Sungano. Sungano, when you look at across the region, at political internal party democracy and its implications for national governance, how do we compare?
Thank you so much, Brian. I think, first of all, I want to thank Musengezi for bringing this case. I think for me, what is of greater interest in terms of where I'm coming from, in terms of the work that I do on the continent, is political parties are institutions that we have neglected in terms of focusing on intra-party democracy. And if you look at most ruling parties across the continent, most of them are in ICU. Either they are confronted with intra-party democracy challenges, or they are confronting problems of leadership renewal, succession. And these are challenges that are that are affecting most of these countries. The other unfortunate incident is that this is not only confined to ruling parties, it's also affecting opposition political parties. And therefore, an academic question that I always contend with is, how then do we, or why are we surprised with how our countries are governed, when in essence the political parties themselves are failing to deal with intra-party democracy issues? And therefore, the case that has been brought here brings to the fore the key challenges that are there in terms of the intra-party issues within ZANU-PF. And while I am known for expressing my reservations in terms of the efficacy of bringing political matters to the courts, for once, I believe that there is a real opportunity here. And this is where I take what Tony has said seriously. I see a real opportunity where our journalists and most key people within the civil society can take an interest in terms of just unpacking these dynamics. There are a lot of layers that this case brings to the fore. And if you even look at it comparatively in terms of the dynamics within our opposition, this in instance raises critical questions on political parties in nature and what are some of the problems that we are saddled with. And we are not unique. This happens across the continent. But however, what is now happening is that this also raises issues on political parties themselves. They're still relevant, or there is now need for us to evolve into coalitions or as a mode in which one can be able to deal with transfer of power and contestation for power. So this is a very interesting case, and thank you so much, Sybeth, for holding this discussion. I have really learned a lot, and I appreciate it. Thanks, Brian.
Sorry, Sungano, before you go, just one quick question for you. Well, if this case succeeds and things play out as Dr. Zamchia has said, given where he has located the military factor and that there are factions, do you foresee an election in 2023, or do you foresee a coalition built before the election? And where might such coalitions go? Like, who might be in coalition with who, in your estimation? I know this is speculative.
So in my estimation, I take what Dr. Zamchia has presented. I foresee the outcome of this election being part of the capturing and the intra-party fighting within ZANU-PF. So my issue is whatever court decision that comes out of this, obviously there will be the hand of the military or some faction within ZANU-PF. And looking at how the facts are in terms of how clear they are, if the decision is made that obviously confirming the illegality and the legitimacy of Mnangagwa, that he is illegitimate, those who are on the side of it or supportive of it in terms of the military or factions within ZANU-PF, they will take it as an opportunity of them deposing Mnangagwa, and that presents an opportunity for them through the courts for them to move their agenda. The critical question that we need to ask ourselves is how far are they willing to go? Are they willing to go to take that as an opportunity of them giving Chiwenga an opportunity for him to take over? What sort of a state architecture are we going to get under Chiwenga? Is he going to present himself as a reformist? Is he going to draw in Nelson Chamisa and other entities? That remains that remains in terms of how he looks at it. If the court case fails, the reality is the status quo remains, but intra-party factionalism persists. Regarding the 2023 elections, either faction sees it as an opportunity. But in my estimation, if I'm to be asked by the Chiwenga faction, if they take this, whether they should go for an election or not, my argument would be to basically say, come up with an arrangement in terms of dealing with the key parties within Zimbabwe, particularly Nelson Chamisa, go into a discussion with him in terms of how we can be able to address key reforms within Zimbabwe that can allow a free and fair election. Remember, all the other entities outside of Nelson Chamisa are scared of elections. They know fully well that if they go for an election, a free and fair election, Nelson Chamisa will get it. And I think that's a fact that we need to contend with. So they are all scared scared with an election. So Nelson Chamisa has to be able to make concessions with them to say, okay, fine, since you've got a higher appetite that you want to be given an opportunity to run this for a couple of years, I am willing, I've got edge on my side that we have a reformist agenda, a coalition government that deals with critical questions that have dogged Zimbabwe, reform, address those issues, and then we go for an election. So 2023 election, if there are no reforms, we are likely going to have a recycle of what we have had over and over again, because any other entity or institution that is not Nelson Chamisa is scared of an election, and we will have the same outcome, go to the court and a similar judgment. That's how I look at it, Brian.
Thanks for those encouraging words. I was hoping that you would tell us and encourage us. Let me, Dr. Mandaza, refer back to Sybeth for his parting shot, and Dr. Zamchia for a 1-minute teaser, and then we hand back to Dr. Mandaza to close this out. Sybeth, your parting shot. You're on mute, Sybeth. Yeah, you're on mute. Sorry?
Oh, yes.
Okay, Sybeth, you're still on mute. Okay. I think Sybeth can come back if are you able to? Go ahead.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes, I can.
Yes, my connection is a bit bad here. Yeah, it's only that my voice, betrayed me today. Like I said, I have a terrible flu. I would have contributed, but I just would like to dispel some rumors that I'm doing this for certain factions or for certain people within and outside of ZANU-PF. I'm doing this so that our leaders will follow the constitution of our party, so that as members of ZANU-PF, we are given a chance to choose the leadership of our choice. Like I said in my SADC interview, I don't have a problem with Emmerson Mnangagwa being re-elected in a properly constituted meeting. But for as long as it is done outside of the dictates of the ZANU-PF constitution, I will continue to have problems with the leadership that we have. We don't like the kind of leadership imposition that we have right now. I want us to have a situation whereby we select our own leadership.
My brother, thank you so much. I'm quite sure there are many Zimbabweans who admire both your courage and your commitment to constitutionalism, both within the state and within your political party. And I think if I understood Dr. Zamchia and others, they're saying this is a pervasive problem, not just in your political party, ZANU-PF, but across many political parties. Dr. Zamchia, your 1-minute quotable quotes.
Oh yeah, thank you, Brian. I just want to say that to me, this is a culmination of the deepening and widening internal contradictions within ZANU-PF since post-November 2017, where there was an unconditional takeover, in my view, of both the party and the state. And I think that internal party democracy is very important, not just within ZANU-PF, but across the board. Because the way that decisions are made within these political parties, they do impact on the democratic or autocratic nature of the wider society. So I think it's very important for citizens to keep on fighting for internal party democracy, and that this case is now beyond Musengezi. There are other forces that are interested covertly or overtly. How they are going to act will decide the next step. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Ibu.
Dr. Mandaza and Tony and colleagues, conveners of this, let me thank you for the opportunity to facilitate and for a riveting discussion. I would have hoped that more people would shed light on this But I learned Dr. Mandaza through President Obasanjo when he was accused for making a third-term bid. And he asked the journalist, did you for one time, for 1 minute, any minute, hear me supporting those who were demanding that I stand for third term? The journalist said no, but you didn't stop them either. And his response was, throughout all this time, I kept studied silence. So I learned that there's something called studied silence. And I trust that those who were listening, both from state security and those from other political parties, you found this informative. Dr. Mandaza, thank you so much. Over to you.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks very much. Before I thank you formally, just to first and foremost betray a confidence. This was a short notice at the prompting of Glenn Mpani, whom you heard speak at length. So Glenn, thanks very much for pushing us this way. It wasn't heavily attended, but with enough people. And we spent the 2 hours fully on the subject. And more important, the young man, Musengezi, for whom this policy dialogue was held in support of a young citizen, brave enough to stand up as he has, is under extreme pressure. And we feel that the publicizing his case the way we have, it provides a level of protection for him against the force that might be. And we must keep that way. We must protect him. We must stand by him for his democratic rights to stand up as he has. But Glenn Mpani, thanks very much for this initiative, without which we would not have had it. When you suggested it last week, Friday, short notice, we thought it was a grand idea. And then, of course, to thank Sybeth himself. Thank you very much, Sybeth. I know genuinely you were not well, but your case is self-evident. The papers are there. We know what might happen out in the front, but at least a statement has been made, and it's an important statement in its own right. And my Treasurer, as I'm chair, thanks for coming to the party as usual and doing a good job. Brian, for recruiting you at last minute, regimenting you as we have, and thank you very much indeed. And my brother Jonathan out there, wherever you are, thanks for coming on board, Tony and everybody else. Thank you. We meet again next week, whatever the topic is, but thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Nakomituma, ondele akende, ipanda tuaka goya nanie Africa 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 oh dipata Africa oh liberté Africa